So often, we talk to ourselves more harshly than we would ever allow anyone else to speak with us, or even how we would speak to someone else. Why do we allow this cruelty from ourselves? Why do we allow so much of our lives' suffering to be caused by ourselves? This is because we are unconsciously, habitually thinking. We have created a habit of negatively being our own worst critic. We have created a habit of pressure and negativity on ourselves that doesn't serve us. And when we realize how silly it is that we are creating our own needless suffering, it can almost instantly disappear because unconscious thinking cannot survive the light of consciousness. We can't fight the darkness. We can't suppress the darkness. We can only shine light to dissolve this unconscious, negative, incessant stream of thoughts that we do to ourselves. Instead, we must love ourselves. We must forgive ourselves. We must let go of our judgments of ourselves from past mistakes and recognize that we are perfectly imperfect, just like everyone else. And we need to show ourselves the same love and forgiveness that we can extend to others. We identify with our body and our thoughts and our minds. And so we have this extra sense of pressure on ourselves. We want to create a perfect life for ourselves. But this idea of a perfect life is something that we become so attached to that because we eventually realize this idea of perfection can never be attained, it creates an immense deal of suffering when the slightest mistake occurs, when the slightest thing doesn't go our way. And we can see in others how hard they're being on themselves and how maybe unfairly they're treating themselves. But when it comes to us, we lose sight of this. We expect perfection from ourselves, and this unrealistic ideal of perfection creates an immense amount of stress when it is not reached. We have to learn to let go when things don't go our way. Let these circumstances stay in the past, learn from them, and in this way, every negative thing that happens, every mistake we make is a learning opportunity and a beautiful chance for growth and progress to happen. And it can only happen when we love ourselves and when we forgive ourselves and when we're gentle and kind to ourselves. And in this way, we can live the most joyful life. We can have everything we've dreamed of, which is to live a life of peace and joy and a rich inner life, to be spiritually wealthy. Because the person that we're with 24/7, ourselves, treats ourselves with love and kindness and compassion. And there is no greater relationship in our entire life than the one we have with ourselves. So it's more important than in any other relationship that we're kind to ourselves, that we allow ourselves to make mistakes, because we will learn and grow. To fight with ourselves is to let ourselves be our own worst enemy. And instead of this critical voice in our head, we can simply witness it as the temporary thoughts coming and going, and they have no more weight over us. We don't have to believe our thoughts. And when we listen to our thoughts, we become free from our thoughts. A cluttered mind is a chaotic mind. When we have too many things going on in our brain, when we practice multitasking so much, when we're so busy for most of the day, our minds become cluttered. And it can be impossible to actually focus on something or to relax. It's a very common experience. The busier we get and the more technological gadgets that come out every single day, the more difficult it can be to find peace and maintain peace. There's an old saying that if you're too busy to meditate for 20 minutes, you need to meditate for an hour. And I love this quote because it's really getting to the heart of this notion that the busier we are, the more we need time to let our mind unwind, to process all of the things our mind has taken in that day, and to simply give ourselves a chance to be. When our minds are cluttered, we are unable to become at peace. The mind habitually wants to jump from thought to thought, and it is grasping at anything it can latch onto. And the more clutter in our mind, the more things it has to grasp for, obsess over. And when we can focus on just one thing, whether it's our breath or a mantra or a flower, this is what real peace is. This is a calm and settled mind. It's not to say the absence of anything to think about, because there will always be plenty of stuff to worry about and think about. But if we can train our mind to create some peace and stillness and allow ourselves to focus on that peace and stillness and to be present for a sustained amount of time, we will feel at peace. And when our mind is so cluttered, so full, we actually become mindless instead of mindful. Because mindful is about awareness of the here and now, being fully present. And when our mind is too full, we don't even see what's happening around us. We are completely lost in our head, and perhaps you've experienced a time in your life when you are just fixated on some mental concept, thought, memory, and you realize you are completely unaware of something happening right in front of you. So the more cluttered our mind becomes, the more difficult it is to see reality around us as it really is. As our minds become full of judgments and labels and opinions, and we're constantly projecting these biases onto everything around us, the more impossible it becomes to actually experience life as it truly is, which is to say, peaceful, no matter what is happening. Life is neutral. Only our thoughts and labels create these judgments upon everything we're seeing and hearing. And so, to declutter the mind, we simply have to practice focusing. And that is really the practice of meditation. Meditation is simply focusing on our breath or a mantra, or you can use a flower or a crystal or a candle or whatever works for you. And then when thoughts come in, we simply bring our attention back to our breath or mantra or whatever the object of focus is. This is the key to having a busy life like we all do, but without having a cluttered mind. And it's so important, especially as we live in an age when there's more distractions than ever before, when people brag about multitasking and not sleeping enough at night because we live in this go, go, go collective consciousness that just says, do more, work harder, and doesn't value inner joy and peace, which is the most valuable thing we have.
The reason we have jealousy is because we resist jealousy. We fight it, we try to push it away, and so we don't understand it. We put up a resistance to it, and so we're strangers to jealousy. And in order to dissolve our jealousy, because we can't fight it, but we can dissolve the weight and the power it has over our inner peace and a calm, joyful mindset. But instead of fighting it, we have to accept it, and we have to look at it and embrace it. All suffering from jealousy lies in the resistance to jealousy. If we can love our jealousy and look at it, and we remain calm and centered, and we can tap into our higher consciousness and our higher wisdom and say, this isn't serving me. I see it, I recognize it, but I choose to not focus on it or to disturb my inner peace. And by looking closely, we'll see that jealousy isn't actually a real thing that is there. It may be things we see that we long for, and so we sit with that feeling. It may be someone showing off something they have and making us angry. But those are just words that is another person's life, and these are just comparative thought patterns. When we see the world as endless variety, we fail to see the oneness. And the comparative mindset thrives in this seeming object-fueled world we live in, which of course misses the true meaning of our lives that are non-material, like love, connections, relationships. And so we have to raise our awareness to this connectedness, this oneness. Raise this awareness to every emotional and mental state of our own mind, and make peace with what is, and use our powers of focus to turn our mind towards the things that really matter, towards making our lives and those around us better, more joyful, more peaceful and calm, more healthy and beautiful. And in this way, we turn our attention from jealousy of someone else's success into the creation of someone else's success. And this is the dissolving power that the light of consciousness can shine on the darknesses of things like jealousy and envy and greed. We can't control everything that happens to us. We can't control what other people do. And so we can't control everything that comes into our mental space. It may be something desirable, maybe something undesirable, or even our mind may constantly be projecting comparisons. But we can control how we view every situation that comes into our minds. Whatever enters our physical surroundings that are picked up by our sense perceptions and projected into our minds, we can learn to sit with whatever comes in peace and acceptance and even love. Having jealousy is worse than having the thing you're jealous about. It makes us obsessive and negative, and it feels terrible, and we hate that we are feeling this jealousy. And it is that hatred where the actual suffering lies. And allowing that jealousy to just be, and just even be a opportunity and a reminder to notice this funny little thought that pops in our head. This funny little clever, sneaky tactic of the ego. This brings our higher consciousness into play, and we can notice something without following that train of thought. We can notice something arise, and we don't have to believe it. We can just be aware of it. Because deep down, with our higher consciousness and intuition leading us, we fundamentally know that jealousy does not serve us. It wants to disturb our inner peace, just wants to give the ego something to fixate on. It'll keep the ego busy for so long, and that just strengthens the ego the more time it has in control of our higher consciousness, and does not want us to know that there is a greater wisdom within us, a wisdom that knows jealousy causes inner torment, does nothing for the other person, destroys relationships, creates negative feelings. And we do that simply by observing, looking close, turning our attention inward towards the jealousy, and raising our awareness to the jealousy and to the oneness of all reality, where we become one with the universe, where there is no separateness for yourself or someone else, because there is no separate you and separate them. There is only oneness. There can be no jealousy once we experience this oneness, because there is no I or you. There is only a force of love and consciousness when everything is stripped away. And so as we weed the seeds of jealousy and envy in our mind, let's plant and nourish the seeds of gratitude and love. And over time, you will see a beautiful garden of the mind. Addiction to online shopping is as serious as any other addiction. When you press buy on that website, you get a dose of dopamine and all these other pleasure chemicals get activated, just like heroin or crack would do. But shopping is a bit of a different nature, because unlike gambling, unlike drinking alcohol, we do need things. There are things we need to buy. And so you can't quit cold turkey and you can't just say no. The trick with online shopping is to make sure that we do it mindfully. We have to look closely at every decision as run through the filter of, is this something I really need? Is this something I'll really use? Is this something I can afford? Whatever your filters are, you can run any purchase through them and make sure you're making a right decision. You can make sure your accounts are shared with someone you trust, and so that they can keep an eye on it. Make sure you and someone else can even help. Make sure you're not spending time shopping for things you don't need. But this all starts with mindfulness, being mindful of the time we spend, mindful of the decision making that goes into an item. And so to become mindful, we have to practice mindfulness. We have to turn every activity in our lives into a mindfulness exercise, where instead of just mindlessly brushing our teeth or doing the dishes, looking to the next thing we're going to do after that, thinking about the rest of our day, we can be fully present at the task at hand. We can, if we're brushing our teeth, feel each tooth and bubble swishing around in our mouths, and fully present on feeling each brush stroke and the sensations we feel. Or if we're doing the dishes, fully present, making this moment the goal of this moment, not finishing the dishes, and just fully becoming present and reconnecting with the richness and depth that is always in the present moment around us. The more mindful we become of our shopping addiction, the more mindful we become that quick hit of dopamine when we press buy is so short-lived, and it's futile to chase that dopamine hit, and that it's okay to allow that sunken feeling to come in, that we can sit with it because we're bigger than that feeling. We are the awareness of that feeling, not the feeler. The more we notice that this short-lived hit of dopamine isn't lasting joy, and the more we overcome that urge, that mindless chasing of that urge that is hurting us and our family, only then can we actually start to turn inward and to touch and experience that peace and joy that truly lasts from within, because that's the only place. It's not in some product or experience out beyond us. It is always there within us. And the more we can tune away to what's around us and tune in to what's within us, the more familiar we become with this rich and lasting joy and peace that is truly real, because it's not based on any temporary, fleeting rush of pleasure. It is eternal, timeless, changeless. And the more that we chase these fleeting pleasures that cause lasting pain, the further we move away from peace, and the more our inner peace is disturbed and our lives feel chaotic. Simply the act of creating and sticking to a daily meditation practice, even if it's for 5 minutes a day, creates the discipline that we need, that can be applied to every aspect of our lives, from any kind of bad habits, any kind of addiction, healing any kind of trauma. They all take discipline and intention, as well as focus and determination. And sometimes when we feel lost and out of control, simply achieving this one skill with dedication, meditation, we learn true discipline for whatever we do. This is why meditation can truly turn people's lives around and completely transform a person from negative and suffering to joyful, peaceful, grateful, loving, and calm. When you have an inner peace and an inner joy so strong and so lasting, then any quick hit of dopamine, whether it's shopping or smoking or drinking or too much TV or too much work, cannot hold a candle to the inner peace and joy within. And it is our birthright. Every single human has it. And we just have to peer down deep enough through all of the stuff, the life story, the traumas, the labels we've identified with. And as we dig deeper and peel away those layers, and the only way is looking, as in a daily practice of meditation, we will experience it and know it. And our habits and our actions and our words will be thoughtful and mindful and intentional. And no action that causes harm can be possible.
The more we watch our thoughts and our emotions, the more we become our true selves, which is the watcher, the person actually having this experience, not the thoughts, not the feelings, but the blank canvas on which all these thoughts, emotions, and experiences occur. We are that essence underlying all of the experiences and forms in our lives. When we become more skilled at watching, witnessing, and observing our thoughts and emotions, we can see them arise, and an incredible thing can happen. We can see anger, negativity, sad, distressing feelings arise, and we can look at them, and we can even laugh at them, and because we are recognizing them, and everything just becomes part of the play of life, neither good nor bad, because we're not labeling it good or bad. We are not resisting it. We are simply witnessing it. And when we start to feel our muscles tense up, when we start to feel our heartbeat racing faster and our breath becoming more shallow and maybe our fists clenching, we can just laugh and say, there is that feeling and emotion. And that is the true self observing our thoughts and our minds, and not us lost in our thoughts, lost in our feelings, reacting unconsciously, reacting in a way that if we were calm and peaceful and simply witnessing with awareness, we would never react. We so often react in ways that make a situation so much worse. We lose our temper, and we look foolish. We create an image of ourselves that we wish we hadn't done. And we can tarnish our image, and we can make this reaction the focal point of the situation instead of something that may need to be addressed. And we may lash out at someone else, and then they put their defenses up, and a clear, honest communication cannot take place. So often when we lose ourselves in these very heavy emotions, we can't even find words to communicate what we're feeling because we are so lost, and we simply punch a wall or throw something or just scream noises. And when we can just witness these emotions, maintain our composure, we can communicate anything. And we can communicate from a place of love and peace, that deep state that is always within us, that no emotion or thought or negative feeling or downward spiral of emotions can obscure, because it's always there. There is deep stillness in the ocean, underneath even raging waters, and we can tap into it anytime. We simply have to practice witnessing. And even in times of joy, we can observe that, and we can notice the feelings of joy and not get lost in those feelings either. And in this way, we can live our entire lives with peace and equanimity and lasting joy that only comes from within. Letting go is a skill that we can practice and strengthen like a muscle that we would train. Every single moment that happens in our lives is an opportunity to practice letting go. And this is the key to living in the present moment, where there is no bad memories, no worries for the future. We're just fully in this moment, at peace with whatever we're doing. All suffering happens when we are either in the past or the future and not in the present moment. Even when something bad is happening, it's actually after that moment where the suffering lives. And the more we practice always letting go, the more that we can stay in the moment and be at peace. Almost every single time in our lives where we feel pain or we're, just so angry about some situation, it's always something that happened in the past. And if we can take every moment that's happened and let it go, we don't forget it, our memory still works. But when we can truly let go of every bad and hurtful experience, and we can even let go of joyful experiences, we will find lasting joy instead of temporary joy. And so the way to do this is to just either look at something in the present moment, fully, completely, observing the sounds and the sights of our surroundings, and to stay in this moment, which means to fully look with curiosity and intention, not labeling, judging, not fixated on something great or terrible that just happened or that may happen. Our minds are so powerful and effective. The greatest computers still to this day. We do not need to create a mental stream of thought labeling things as bad to know not to put your hand in fire or not go down that dark alley at night. That is from a higher wisdom, the knowing, not the thinking. And knowing is far superior to a constant stream of thought that is only one word at a time, rushing through our brain, often repetitive, often negative. And instead, when we can be present, the higher understanding and knowing occurs. There's a really wonderful notion that came from the ancient Egyptians, where when they would mummify a pharaoh, they would store the heart, which they thought was the most precious part of the body, and they would rip out the brain and throw it away. Not because they thought it was worthless or they didn't understand what it did, but because they understood that it's the heart that is where our intuition and our true wisdom comes from. That hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary DNA intelligence is stored so far beyond anything the mind can think. We don't have to tell our lungs to breathe or our hearts to beat, or our blood to flow. These things happen automatically because there is a greater wisdom within us. And the more we can let go of whatever our mind is fixated on, the more we can be present, the more that wisdom can guide us. The more we are instinctual, intuitive beings living through our intention and our greatest intelligence. And all you have to do is observe the present moment, to be fully present and to let go of the past and your worries for the future. And that is why one of the greatest things that we can do is to simply observe our breath, because it is always in the present moment. We never are looking at our past breath. We're not thinking about the next breath. When we look at our breath, it is a gateway to the present moment, and most importantly, it is always with us. And all we have to do is look at it, and we can let go of everything else.
Trying to force our minds to stop thinking negative thoughts is like trying to mop up the ocean with a mop. You're never going to make any progress. It's that old expression, don't think of a purple elephant, and then that is all you will think about. The thing we try to push away the most is the thing that will build up in our minds more and more and more the harder we try. This is why resistance is futile. We have to work with our mind, and we have to understand the nature of our mind. And what this means is to observe our mind. This is what is at the root of all understanding. All wisdom, all scientific inquiry starts with observation. And when we notice negative thoughts in our mind, you can't suppress them, you can't control them, and you can't force them to stop. To suppress them means they're still there, underneath the surface, and just waiting to explode in either rage and anger, or in physical pain or medical illness, because the mind and the body are connected. And if you try to ignore something or pretend something isn't there, then it can really fester and multiply. The only thing we can really do is bring conscious awareness to unconscious thinking patterns, because we would not think negative thoughts consciously. These are unconscious impulses. And so consciousness is what will dissolve that. The light of consciousness will overshine the darkness of unconscious, unaware, negative thinking patterns. We must become aware of them. And then once we become aware of them, that unconscious thinking stops immediately. So it's not enough to try to force them away or wish them away. We have to observe it, understand how the mind works, what makes it think negative things. And then the most important thing we can do after that is to expand our conscious awareness and to expand our perspective so that the thing that is bothering us, the thing we think negatively of, becomes microscopic compared to the beauty and wonder that we focus our attention on instead. It's as though
our mind is the ocean, and negative thoughts and all the stress is the surface. And when we become aware of the depth of the ocean, the silence and the stillness and the calm just beneath the surface that is miles deep, those maybe 15-foot raging waves seem insignificant. And so we have to practice raising our awareness, and most importantly, we have to practice learning to focus and shift our attention. And this is really what meditation is all about, because in meditation, we are doing something that people always say when you're a child, pay attention, but you're never taught how to do. And in meditation, we are just practicing on paying attention, either to your breath, your body, or a mantra, or if you like a candle or a crystal, whatever is your focus of awareness, you make the practice of training your mind to pay attention and to focus on that thing, or whatever, that skill of training your mind to pay attention will translate into paying attention and focusing on whatever it is you wish. And once we learn to pay attention and focus our mind and become consciously aware of what we choose to, we stop focusing on negative things and we choose instead to focus on positive things, because consciously we are aware that getting stuck focusing and obsessing over things that upset us, things that aren't going right, we realize isn't serving us and is making us suffer and miserable. So with the simple practice of a few minutes a day meditating, focusing on something like your breath or a mantra, and then when you get lost in thoughts, you just gently bring your attention back to that thing you're focusing on. And over time, you are going to have a very strong muscle of the mind to focus with great intention and attention on whatever you wish. That is the secret. I hope that helps. Thank you so much for watching, and peace of love.